In this video, we're going to cover the best types of subject lines for you to use. Now, when it comes to email marketing, your subject lines are very, very important because it doesn't matter how good the offer is that you present in your email, it doesn't matter how good your copy is or how good your call to action is, you are not going to make any money and your results will be very poor if your subject lines are not good enough, because everything stems from your subject lines, and that's why it's so important. Now, what I've done, I've created 5 different tips that I'm going to walk you through which will help you to improve your email marketing when it comes to your subject lines, and just explain to you the psychology behind how a good subject line works. Now, the first tip is to create curiosity in your subject lines. Now, at the subject line stage, you do not want to give people too much information. This is the stage where you kind of give people a little bit of a teaser just to get people to open your email. If you give people too much information at this stage, then they will have absolutely no need to open your email. So you need to understand that your subject line should only tease people and just make people want to read more. Okay, you can't give people the full story in the subject line because there will be no need for them to open the email to find out more. And this is why if you use something that spikes their curiosity in the subject line, that is how you're going to get higher open rates, because curiosity is a very strong human emotion and people will often click through just to find out what you're talking about. So if you make your subject lines curious, okay, make people want to find out more. You don't have to create every single subject line with the curiosity technique in mind, but just make sure that you include this in your marketing because it's very powerful and it definitely helps your open rates. So that's the first tip. So create some curiosity when you create new subject lines. Tip number 2 is you must identify your list's hot buttons. Okay, your hot buttons. By that I mean every list that you create, there's going to be particular subjects and particular topics that they really like to speak about and they really like to talk about and they want more information on. So this is something that only you can really decide, and a lot of it comes down to when you do your testing. When you send emails out and broadcasts out, pay attention to your open rates both on your broadcasts and your follow-up messages, and over time you may start to see some trends, and particular subject lines always get a higher open rate. So this is how you can identify your list hot buttons, by paying attention to your broadcasts over time, your follow-ups, and this isn't something that you can find out overnight. It's just going to be something that you find out over time, but it's very powerful because you can then find out what your list likes, what they respond better to, and then you can perhaps use some of those ideas within future subject lines to get a higher open rate. So your hot buttons are very important, so make sure that you use those in your campaigns. Tip number 3 is to include something that spikes, or to include something which is fairly strange, bizarre, weird, or quite funny. Basically any of those, and it's going to spike some curiosity, again, which I covered in tip number 1. But anything that's quite strange, quite bizarre, weird, or funny, then people want to find out more. Okay, you don't make your subject lines boring. You have to make them so that people want to open your emails to find out more. So what you can do is obviously still keep all of your subject lines still to do with your niche, to do with your market, but at the same time you can include a little bit of weirdness in there, perhaps include anything that sounds quite strange, quite bizarre in the subject lines. And again, people get a little bit curious and they want to open the email. So those 4 things there will definitely help you to get more or get higher open rates. Now, tip number 4 is something that often gets overlooked, which is to include everyday things that people can relate to in your subject line. This doesn't always have to be to do with your actual niche. This could be to do with like family things, anything, babies, anything like that. Things that people can actually, every single person can relate to, and this is a very powerful tactic alone. Now, I'm not going to go into too much detail on this, but kind of just use your imagination. Just think of things that everyone can relate to. Anything to do with families, children, anything like that. Basically, anything that nearly every single person can relate to. And if you use that in your subject lines, kind of use that in combination with everything else that I've shown you so far, and you will start to see higher open rates, because the thing is, people can relate to personal kind of experiences. They can relate to family situations and family problems and anything like that. So if you can create some type of subject line which relates to any of that, as well as perhaps include some of the tips that I've given you in the previous 3 tips, then you will see higher open rates. Now, tip number 5, this is the last tip, is be a little bit different and forget hype and doing the same as what most other people do. This applies in any single niche and any single industry that you work in. Okay, this isn't just the internet marketing niche, because that's one of my niches, that's one of my main niches, but this applies to any niche and any industry. Just forget hype and be a little bit different, and just create some subject lines which perhaps most people wouldn't use. If you're a little bit different, then you stand out. Okay, if you just be the same as everyone else, then you're just going to blend into the background and people are just going to forget about you. For instance, if you were in the internet marketing niche, some of the most popular subject lines, okay, people use big figures. For instance, this guy made $6,729.66 in 3 hours. Find out how, kind of subject line. Okay, people don't want to hear all this crap. Okay, that's not really the sort of thing that you want to use. That's if you were in the internet marketing niche. Any other niche, again, the same principle applies. Don't use hype, don't use all of that crap. Just be a bit different and don't do things the same as most other people, and especially most other marketers out there, because most people with email marketing, they do things completely the wrong way. And if you can just take one tip from everything that I've given you throughout this video, and that is to be different and to make sure that your email subject lines stand out from everyone else, and be different, okay, be creative, and especially forget any of the hype. So those 5 tips, the first one is create some curiosity, because that will definitely help your open rates. Tip number 2 is identify your list's hot buttons. That is very powerful, because that is definitely going to help you to get higher open rates. Again, this may take you a little bit of time, but this is something that you can work on over weeks and months as you build your lists. Tip 3 was create some strange, bizarre, weird and funny type of headlines. They work really well. Tip 4, everyday stuff that people can relate to, okay, families, children, anything like that. And the last tip, tip 5, was be different, forget the hype, and don't do the same as everyone else. And try and be different to what most other people do. And if you do this, then you will stand out, and people will start to enjoy your emails. And as soon as you email people, then they are going to want to open your emails to find out more. So those are the 5 tips. Definitely start to use those within your email campaigns, and you will see a very big difference in your open rates.